Hey guys, I'm back and this is a quite long process video because I'm sharing the 10 cards that I have made with my homemade kit. And let me know if you guys like these kinds of videos. I really enjoyed making my 10 cards. It did have some challenges, and I will let you know what it was or what it is as I go along with it. But I like the results, and I'm thinking of doing this again at least maybe every quarter or so. So let me know what your thoughts are. So I'm starting off with just creating my card bases with a 5 card stock that I had picked for this homemade kit. I just cut them in half, and then I score them. So I will have an A2 size card, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I think that this, for me anyways, it's the perfect size for me as far as cards is concerned, because it's not so hard to buy the envelopes for it. As far as envelopes, I just usually buy them. I buy the 100 pack at Staples or Office Max, and they're around about $12, so it comes out to about 12 cents per envelope. And I have also learned in the past to make sure that my card is not so bumpy, so I can make sure to add it. So here we go, our first card. So like I said in when I was showing you the homemade kit or the items in my kit, that I wanted to do some shaker cards. So the first thing I'm going to do is a shaker card, and I just pulled out some papers that I wanted to use for this particular card. And I know that when I was looking at this pattern paper with all of the cupcakes, that I wanted to cut out some of that as my accents. I wanted to really stretch myself as far as just looking within my stash or the kit that I put together to put together my card, and not pull out too many things out of my stash. I did manage to do most of that in these cards. So I guess my comfort zone, you could say, when it comes to either cards or layout, is to have a border around my pattern paper. And if you've watched my scrapbook layouts, you know that I do that all the time. I cut about a 1/4 inch on all sides of my layout and then adhere it to a pattern paper. And that's what I did on almost all of these cards as well. I did a background pattern paper and cut that just about a 1/4 inch smaller than my card base, and then add that to the page. Now the text paper that had happy birthday, that's going to be my shaker pocket, and so that's why I cut the circle with that specific paper, and I was just measuring it to make sure that it will be centered on my page or on my card. So just giving you a heads up, one thing that I realized with making 10 cards, especially when you don't make cards all the time, it's like an Olympics. I mean, you have to be really good at kind of thinking off the fly with these 10 cards, especially if you're videotaping them. I found that like by the fourth or fifth card, I was running out of steam. I literally had to walk away because I couldn't think of any clever design or a design that I haven't done in the previous cards. So I think the first 3 cards were all shaker cards because that's where my brain was. Just going back to the card, so I adhered some just double-sided adhesive on the back of that circle, and then I also added a piece of acetate on there, and that's where I'm going to heat emboss this sentiment. And I made sure that I added my powder, or I just brushed it off with my powder tool to make sure that the static is off of the acetate and that I could get a clear impression. But even that, I had to go and use a little brush to wipe off all of the excess embossing powder that I didn't want to go on my acetate. And I'm not a very, like, I haven't really mastered the technique of embossing. I have to say that off right off the bat. And so my embossing is not really crisp and pretty, but it works for me right now, and so I'm just gonna give it a go. And here I'm adding some double-sided foam adhesive, and as you can see, I'm kind of rounding that, just make sure that it's on the edge of this circle because that's where I'm going to put my shaker. All right, so this is where I made my first mistake. My first mistake was that I put the elements or the sequence on that circle that I created, and then I turned it over. What I should have done is that I should have kind of eyeballed where the sequence is going to go, and then put the sequence on the pattern paper, the pink pattern paper that's already on my card, and then put my my shaker pocket, because look here, I'm trying to figure out how am I going to put this on there. I don't know. So I ended up putting on there and it's not straight. Oh well, lesson learned. This is my first card, so bear with me. I will learn, well, not on the second or third, but on the fourth one, I will get it that there is a better way to make my shaker cards. So there is my first card. I added some photo corners on around that little piece of text paper just to give it a little bit more emphasis. And then I'm adding my 3 cupcakes. One was added with foam adhesive. So let's go on to card number 2. So this one is also a fairly simple card. I wanted to kind of play around more with the circle die cut that I have, and so I'm going to be making some balloons out of it, just kind of pulling out some papers. I love the idea of layering these papers on top of each other, and so that's what I'm going to be doing here. Again, I have a background cardstock, and then I've cut a pattern paper about a 1/4 inch or maybe an 1/8 of an inch smaller all around from my card base, and then I'm adhering that on the center of the card. And here I'm just kind of looking, and I saw the zigzag kind of paper, and I really like the multicolor on there, and so that's where I'm going to be cutting my balloons from. I'm just going to cut 3 out of that, and because I'm a messy scrapbooker or paper crafter, and I don't throw away my scraps right away, I kind of leave them in a corner of my table, I'm actually going to use the negative part of that pattern paper that I'd cut out the circles for another card, and you will see that next, or maybe yeah, I think it's the next one. So here I'm going to try to heat emboss again, and I'm just using the same black embossing powder. I believe that's Hampton's, and I got that a while back at Joann's, and using my 40% coupon, of course. And then I'm just heating up my heat gun and then blasting that sentiment so it will emboss. So I have my elements. I decided to highlight those balloons by inking the edges all around it with some red ink pad that I also added with my homemade kit. So if you have not seen my homemade kit, and if you're kind of, this is like the first time you've seen this, or you haven't seen my homemade kit and you're kind of wondering why all of a sudden I'm making a card video on my YouTube channel when I usually do a scrapbook page, I said in my homemade kit, or card homemade kit that I put together, I mentioned there that I've been very inspired by some card makers, and in particular is Vicky, I think her last name is Papanui. I don't know how to pronounce that. Anyway, she puts together these 10 cards using the Simon Says Stamp monthly card kit. And so I was really inspired by what she did, and I kind of wanted to use that as an inspiration. But instead of buying a pre-made card kit, I grabbed items from my stash because I know I have a few things in my stash that I could use. And the theme, mostly, well, the theme of all these 10 cards will be birthday cards, because I used a 6x6 paper pad from Crate Paper that had that theme all around those papers. So as you can see, I layered the papers. I did add a border punch scallop border punch, I made my balloons, and that is my card. Very super easy. And one of the things that Vicky does with her cards is it's not too complicated, which is my thing. I don't like very complicated layouts. Okay, so here is another mistake that I made. I wanted to kind of use that same technique that I've seen people where they layer a die cut shape, usually a die cut word, over on top of each other to create a more dimensional and more bold sentiment. So the mistake that I did for this is I should have ran each letter or each word at least twice so that I didn't have some pockets of places in my letter that didn't quite get cut. So as you can see, I'm here kind of doctoring it up, making sure that it cut or it's separated from my pattern paper. And I'm just peeling everything off. And so I decided to do 3. I'm sure you can do more than 3 and it'll be thicker, but for me, 3 was thick enough for me. And now I'm going to use some liquid adhesive to adhere all of the words on top of each other. And this is, I guess you could have made this easier, or I could have made it easier for myself if I would have added some double-sided adhesive sheets on the back of the pattern paper. So all I had to do was peel it. But because I have this liquid adhesive already on the table and, you know, the idea of using up what I have, I just went along with it. But it is a little bit messier, so if you don't want to deal with the mess, you can always put a whole sheet of double-sided adhesive onto the back of your pattern paper. And here is where I'm going to be using that that's kind of negative spot again that I've used with making my balloons in the second card. Or yeah, the second card. And I'm going to create another window or shaker card with this window. And I have to say, I really like making shaker cards. It's really fun and it gives a little bit of interaction when it comes to your page. Now, this strip is a little bit too long if I would adhere it um, horizontally on my card, and so I did it as on a slant to make sure that I was able to adhere that. So here I've learned my lesson. I made sure that I put my sequins onto the card itself and then put that over it so I could make sure that I centered it wherever I want. I did add a kind of orangey or like dark yellow paper, and then I added the washi tape on the top and the bottom of that card base, and then added my happy. I have these Teresa Collins small letter stickers, and so I'm going to spell birthday with that, and then I'm going to call it good. And I have to apologize because the color of my screen is not very good as far as the lighting, and I'm gonna try to find a better lighting for my videos from here on out because it just shows a very kind of yellowish um, color or cast, I should say. So I'm going to probably invest in better bulbs so that I could get a better lighting. So here I am doing another shaker card, but this time I'm making a circle, and then I'm going to center that on the doily. I have to say I didn't really use the doily very much with this kit. I thought that I would, but I ended up not. But I did manage to use it, I think just in this one, just this one card, I think. So I wanted to do kind of a ribbon, and I am going to do a shaker cut, but before that I'm going to stamp my sentiment onto just the back side of this scrap paper because the back side is white, and then that's going to be my sentiment. I'm going to fussy cut around that, and I'm going to adhere that on my card with some foam adhesive. And so to make that circle that I just created, I layered, or I placed the two die cuts, that is you know, the size is just a 1/4 inch from each other, I added that both onto my cardstock or on my pattern paper before I cut it so that I can create that window there. And again, I'm adhering some, I think it's a 1/4 inch double-sided foam adhesive, and then I'm going to be adhering everything. But like I said, I'm going to put the sequins on that paper first and then put my shaker pocket over that so that I know that my placement is correct and everything is exactly where I want it. So here I decided that I wasn't going to do a pattern paper background. I only had this 6x6 paper pad, and so I wanted to, and I know I was going to make 10 cards, and so I want to make sure that I maximize my supplies the best I can. So here I'm just going to leave the background as is, which is a craft cardstock, and adhere everything on there, but I am going to create a border around it with some pen stitching. So if you guys happen to have any questions about any of these cards that I made, it could include the techniques that I used or the materials that I used, just leave them in the comment section below and I will try to get to them as soon as I can. So there is my number 4 card, and oh, and I decided that I wanted to dress up the background a little bit more, so I'm going to be adding some sequins on the top left and the bottom right. And I'm just using this tool that I have for my Cameo. It has a sticky, one side of it is sticky, so you can just pick up some items or pick up your little items through it. Okay, so this card is going to be a horizontal card because I've been making a lot of vertical cards and I wanted to switch it up a little bit. I'm doing another one of those circle frames that I did in the previous card, but this one is bigger, and I'm going to set that aside, and I just want that circle one, big circle one right there. But I didn't want that just right on the blue cardstock. I think that the blue was just so bold, so striking, and it didn't match the rest of my paper. So of course I'm going to find a pattern paper that would go in there. But before that, so I wanted to use up the positive circle that had been cut from that circle frame, and to dress it up, I wanted to, I added some washi tape on there. It dresses it up, and at the same time it gives it a, it distinguishes it from that circle frame, because if I was just added the circle as is, then you wouldn't know that there was a specific cut on there. And then here I'm trying to figure out which kind of sentiment do I want to use in this one. This card, the stamp set that I have, of course, all have different variations of ways to say happy birthday, and so I kind of wanted to have a variety of those sentiments on these 10 cards. I believe this card would say wishing you a very happy birthday, I believe. I don't have the cards right in front of me. I guess I should pull that out. I do use 2 different stamp sets on here because I wanted to use up the inks that I had pulled for this specific kit. So yeah, I think it's wishing you a very happy birthday or something to that effect. I did cut the left sides of those on with notches so that I can add a little bit more accent to those strips of paper. And here I'm going back to my cupcakes and just adhering them, or fussy cutting them, and then I will adhere them in different spots on my page. I do ink them up with some of that lime green ink just to give it a little bit more accent, and I decided to use my Wink of Stella. Wink of Stella is a glitter pen, and it just adds just a little bit, just a very tiny amount of shine to whatever surface that you rub it on. And then so I'm going to adhere that bold text birthday paper. Adding that pattern paper just makes it better for the rest of my elements, especially my pattern paper, because the blue just doesn't match all of the kind of weathered look of these papers and elements that I'm using. So I'm using some double-sided tape for all of these cards, and I gotta say, double-sided tape is not your friend if you don't have nails, because it was really kind of a struggle for me to just peel all of those strips off of my paper because of not having nails. So just to give you a heads up, I mean, I know that's like a really tiny problem. It's, you know, the what they say is like a first world problem or something like that. But it was an issue for me with these cards. I believe that if I just had my ATG gun or if I had nails, then I would be able to work on these cards faster than I did. I honestly did not calculate how long it took me to make all 10 cards, but I did do it in a span of 2 days, if that makes sense. So here I am with card number 6. And with this one, I wanted to do a pocket card, or I mean, I'm not a pocket card, but a window card, I should say. So I'm adhering all the items that I wanted onto that um, pattern paper, and then I need to adhere that onto my card base before I run it through my die cut, and that's when I'm going to realize that this needs to be adhered onto the card base first. And the reason for that is so that when I die cut it, that circle will go through both papers, both the pattern paper and the cardstock base. And then of course you need to run that a few times through your die cut machine to make sure that it goes through all of those layers of paper, and it did, and I'm happy about that. So I am just adhering some photo corners on the edges of these pattern papers just to give them a little bit of an oomph and accent. So one of the things why I love doing cards is that I can marry, or I can combine I can use my scrapbooking products with making cards. And so I like that because I can justify buying items because it works for two different hobbies. So I'm just trying to fit my elements in there. I believe my sentiment will say, may all your wishes come true. And so I'm having a little bit of a hard time straightening them out because they stick on my fingers and then they move, and so they're not perfect anymore, but I managed to get them to work the way I wanted. So I'm going to grab a clear acrylic block, and I did, before I heat emboss this, is I just grabbed a pencil and made a circle mark around there to make sure that when I do adhere, or when I do stamp the image with Versamark, that I would stamp it within that circle. So when after I heat emboss this, I'm going to erase the circle marks that I had made. So the sentiment is actually inside the card and not on the front. So there is my little window. And I believe I'm going to add some sequins to this. I guess I didn't do that when the video was running. So here I wanted to kind of do a little bit more stamping, because I have just been using the pattern paper and then just stamping with my stamping the sentiment. And so here I kind of wanted to do a background made with arrows that are, so I just used one single arrow stamp, but I used all of my inks. And so this is something that I've learned from just watching a bunch of YouTubers that do cards. I'm really impressed at how innovative and creative they are with the sentiments, or no, rather with the stamps that they have, and also the ink pads. So I kind of wanted to channel that in this card, and I love the results. So I have, if you haven't seen the homemade card kit that I'm using with these 10 cards, make sure that you look in the description below because it will be there. But I did use I picked four different ink pads, a black, a red, kind of a mustard yellow, and kind of a lime green. So I just made sure that I erased the lines that I made because I wanted the card to have like 4 different segments on there to make sure that I get everything so that I could have symmetry with all of my arrows. And so before I stamped the top and bottom and the center stamps or center arrows, that I made sure that I erased my lines first. And here is a negative spot of a circle that I had already cut and used in a previous card, and I just wanted to back that up with some pattern paper. Initially I wanted to just adhere that onto the card, but it was getting lost, and so I adhered a pink paper on the back of that, added a little bit more stamping, and also stamped my greeting onto white cardstock, and then adhered that on the center. And then I'm going to finish it off with some sequins. So these sequins are from Spiegel Mom, and I used just one pack of it, and I still have a lot. So I guess if you're looking for a very inexpensive finishing touch for your cards or your layouts, sequins is really a good place to, or good thing to invest in. And so here is my number 8 card, and I've kind of pre-cut some of this. I realized that when I was doing my cards, the first 5 cards, was that I'm kind of just going or just designing them as I go, and it took me a while, and I wasn't, there were times where I kind of hesitated to put things because I really didn't know if they were going to look good. So I stepped back from doing these videos, and I just kind of pre-planned, and some of them I pre-cut the items that I was going to use on the cards. And so that's why some of the final cards that I made was a little bit faster and easier if you're watching this video, because I've pre-planned them. I know exactly what I'm going to do with each card. So I cut that happy onto just black cardstock from my scraps, and then I added some arrows on some of the circles of that pattern paper just to give it a little bit of design, and also to pick up that red that's on the number paper on the bottom. There was no red on the top of my card, and so I wanted to bring that up a little bit to have more of a balanced design. And here I am again using my Teresa Collins sticker sheet and spelling birthday. I did add some photo corners on there, and I'm going to be adding some sequins. Again, I added sequins on all of those cards, and they are a great and inexpensive finishing touch. So we're getting into card number 9. So I'm using another one of those negative spot on my page, or on my card, and I'm using this this pattern paper has some birthday hats on it, and it's on a diagonal, and so I wanted to use that diagonal to kind of lead the eye to my sentiment. So as you can see, the angle of the arrows, or the points of that angle, or how do you say it? Yeah, the points of the design is going towards your left, where I want where I'm going to be placing my sentiment on. And I inked up the edges to kind of give that a little bit more emphasis. Oh, so here I have learned that I can use the other side of my little silhouette tool to peel that, because it has this end that slanted, so you can kind of slip it under the adhesive and it will pull up. And so if you could believe it, I didn't figure that out, that I can use that till the 9th card. How sad is that? But like I said, I am not a card maker. Well, I am, but I don't make cards all the time. And so like anything, if there's no practice, then you kind of forget what to do. And that's how I feel about cards. So like I said in the beginning, I felt like making these 10 cards was like going to an Olympics, because you really have to be really good and have mastered your skills to be able to do 10 cards in a matter of a few days, or even in one sitting. But this was a good learning experience for me. I would not trade it for anything. Like I said, I liked the results of my cards, and so I think I'm gonna do this at least once every quarter. Helps me to have birthday cards ready to go when I need it for a specific occasion, and at the same time I'm using up my stash. So here we are, 10th card. This is my last card, and I decided to do another one that has a plain white background and not add pattern papers. And I wanted to play with the smooshing technique. I'm not a very techniquey person, but I've seen a lot of people do this, and I figured cards is a smaller canvas, and so if I make a mistake, it's not it's not the end of the world. So what I did was I got some packaging, recycled packaging, and plastic packaging, and then I did cut those circles with my Avery L steel die cut, and then I also cut out the happy with black cardstock, and I'm just creating a border around my card, and then I'm going to put that happy, making that bold sentiment in as my card sentiment, and it will be the boldest accent on my page or on my card. I'm just putting my punch there just to kind of give that some weight, and I thought that, oh, maybe if I just scatter these sequins that it will look haphazard, but it will look really nice. But I'm not that, I know, I can't embrace imperfection as much as I want. So I decided that, oh, that's not going to work, and so I'm just going to put the sequins in different spots, and it's going to be all kind of planned and not haphazardly. So I do put them in 3 different sections so that I can have a visual triangle for my card, because I believe that some of the design concepts that we know in scrapbooking can translate to a card, and so that's why I'm doing the visual triangle on this specific card. And so here are my finished cards, friends. If you can believe that, I was able to make 10 cards. Wow. And here are the samples. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.